Well, let's look at the wider issues around that Nigeria story now with my guest, the current affairs commentator Dorcas, Gwata, and the security analyst Temitope, Olodo. Guys, thanks for coming in. Temitope, let's start with you. 36 towns have been retaken according to Nigerian authorities.
Yes.
So a success story there if that's true, but there's still a long way to go, isn't there?
Yes.
With the elections just over 2 weeks away now, you're still seeing suicide bombings, you're still seeing attacks. So do you think, in your eyes, as a security analyst, do you think those elections can go ahead in just 2 weeks' time?
I think it will go ahead. The challenge, I think, is how to contain it. The containment strategy needs to be robust. We know that in Maiduguri, some individuals were picked up because they were making bombs within a safe environment. So the challenge we have here is how to win the minds and heart to ensure that all these individuals give out their weapons, that their place is really secured. So what we don't want is that on the day of the election we have 3, 4, 5 bombing going on and many people killed.
Yeah, absolutely. Dorcas, do you agree that it's all about the hearts and minds this? You can do as much as you want in terms of bombing and retaking towns, but actually when it comes down to it, in the long term, you need to win these people over and win them over to your ideology.
You do, Simon, and the climate in which these elections will be taking place is very complex. You need sustainable stability in the region. This is a small boil that ended up into a cancerous and a very disastrous catastrophe within the region. If I was a woman voting in the Bono region, would I feel safe enough to queue up and vote? So there are real issues here, aside from the economy and aside from all the other issues going on within Nigeria. I think the elections will go ahead. They really should. But the context in which they'll be going ahead is very, very complex. Are they credible elections, would we say? It's very difficult to judge.
Yeah, well, if they go ahead or if they don't, it's still a very volatile situation,
Absolutely.
isn't it? As a security analyst, how do you try and deal with the prospect of suicide bombers? Because, say, the Nigerian military and the Chadian military and the Cameroonian, they managed to retake every area, say, that Boko Haram have taken. There's still that prospect, isn't there? Always that prospect. We see it day in, day out of suicide bombers. How do you try and stop that from happening?
I think the first thing is to look at the urban security strategy that have been developed to deal with that area. You could take an area, but you need to contain it, which is part of the challenge that the Nigerian government or Nigerian Security Service have been dealing with, having challenges dealing with. Now what they're doing is that they're taking places and they're holding it, which is good. Now they need to have a proper engagement with the community so that the community buy into their counter-terrorism strategy. It's not it doesn't help if you say you have a strategy, you're beating people. All these guys are doing is dropping their guns and absorbing themselves back into the community and building bombs and blowing up. So you need to get the community to buy into your strategy and then look at how to win minds and heart, because most of these people are doing it for different reasons. They're different drivers and they're different faces to Boko Haram.
Yeah, Dorcas, it's long been said, or a lot of commentators say that many Nigerians in the north of the country, and young people especially, are quite disillusioned in terms of their life chances and their futures going forward, and so they don't really see any other chance for, say, even just excitement or just being involved in something than Boko Haram, and that offers them that chance. I assume that is something that needs to change before the situation can get better.
It does, and I think your average young Nigerian is asking themselves, if we could galvanize this amount of effort to tackle Boko Haram today, why on earth didn't we galvanize this amount of effort a couple of years ago? And what's behind the force? Who's pushing behind the force? Do I have faith in Jonathan to lead the country tomorrow? If you're a voter, you're asking yourself those questions. What faith can I have in the economy growing? What about jobs? What about universities? And I think the Boko Haram issues speak to wider issues within Nigeria. There really are issues here that haven't been tackled enough and need head-on tackling.
So without asking you to pick a candidate, do you think people in Nigeria and in the north will see Muhammadu Buhari and his former role as a general and think this guy is the person to tackle Boko Haram?
Do you know, I saw Buhari a couple of weeks ago here in London, and he sounded very solid. He wasn't just tapping into Jonathan's failures. He was making a very strong case that the future of Nigeria belongs to every single Nigerian, and it is the responsibility of every single Nigerian to drive it through. This will feed into the ambivalent voter who's swinging this way and that way, and I think they're swinging more to the Buhari case.
Very interesting. An official at the US Defense says that America does support the creation of this West African force of up to 10,000 troops. How big a morale boost is that for them? Because obviously they need UN backing, really, financially especially, and America coming out and say, we support this idea, which they hadn't done until now, is surely a big boost for them.
It is. What we've noticed in the last few weeks of having this change in approach. We've not heard of a single soldier talking about not having the equipment. We've not heard of them having mutiny, nothing like that. Equipment is given to them, they're doing the job that they're trained to do. And I think having another group coming in to help them will really go a long way to ensure that this issue is minimized. Once it's minimized, because you can't win this war with military might alone, you need to win the heart and souls, just like we've been discussing earlier. It's about getting everybody involved, diaspora involvement, Nigerians and the neighboring country to say, what is the best way? Let's have a roadmap on how to move from where we are now to where we want to be.
Yeah, this West African task force was announced several weeks ago. Nothing's happened because of this UN backing that it needs to really get going. And people will be a bit confused by that. Is that an annoying sort of bureaucratic process that is sort of angering people in Nigeria? Because you've got all these countries saying, yes, we can come together and tackle this, but it doesn't seem to be able to get off the ground. And
we see the same dragging feet of effort in the Ebola crisis, in all the other fires that are breaking through across Africa. I really do wish we could bring up a strong African Union. Very important, though, Simon, that this doesn't become an American-led effort, because it has costs, it has implications. And I think it's very important that we remain localized in terms of local leadership and local ownership of the results of this, because the minute we have external powers who are coming in, they sometimes have their own agendas. And remember, Al-Shabaab is around the corner. They also are fighting a war within the region. So we really need a lot more effort in this. If we don't deal with Boko Haram today, and forever deal with it, we've got a problem right across Africa.
Absolutely, and it raises the question of why it's taken till now for people to get serious about it. Guys, thank you very much. We'll be rejoining you in a few minutes' time. Thanks now for now. Well, with me in the studio now to discuss the further issues and is the current affairs commentator Dorcas Gwata and the security analyst who was with us earlier. Thank you very much, guys, for coming in. Let's talk about this issue in South Africa and Jacob Zuma. Just why are the members of Parliament in South Africa so angry about this Nkandla issue, Temitope? What really riles them about it?
I think it's the fact that the president continues to be defiant on the issue. I saw a bit of the clip, and it seems to be taking them a memory lane, citing issues, motivating them about, the fact that this is issue of, racism or things along that line. That's not what the question that people are asking. 23 million pounds, 23 million was spent, to republish where he lives. A lot of South Africans don't even get 3 square mil in the country, a second largest, economy in Africa. That is a shame, and that is the issue that people are concerned about at the moment.
Dorcas, is it more symbolic of a problem that your leader doesn't really appear to care about the troubles that his country currently has? If he's spending all this money on his homestead, is that more the issue than actually how much money he spent?
I think it's both, actually, Simon. I think it's a really good question. Listen, this really highlights the issues in South Africa. You have a few people who were very wealthy soon after the independence. Pusey, Zuma, these guys are absolutely wealthy. There's a lot of money in Johannesburg as you move around. And you move around the ghettos, and it's a very, very disturbing sight. But what example is Zuma setting by building a village for his wives? Many wives, by the way, more than 25 children, possibly 30 by the time we come round to it. What example is he setting for your average unemployed or employed man in South Africa who's aspiring? You're aspiring to this idea that actually if you have more wives, you don't really particularly need education. All you need is a lot of money, and a lot of quick money. You can get to where you want to be. It's a real shame. He always hides behind his culture, by the way. I'm a Zulu man. I'm entitled to 8 wives. I'm entitled to however many wives. But you're a leader. You have a responsibility to country. And what he failed to do here is pump a lot of money into education. And education then feeds into the social issues that we see right here today in South Africa.
Yeah, you're not setting a great example, you think. Temitope, he seems to be hiding behind the process and the formalities of this South African Parliament, by which they couldn't ask the same questions that they asked last year. Just to remind the viewer, obviously, that last year it all kicked off in the Parliament, and a lot of members of Parliament had to be led out because they were shouting, "Pay back the money, pay back the money." And so because of that, they couldn't ask these same questions again. And so a lot of this most recent hearing, where he was given 6 questions, I think, to answer, they couldn't ask the same questions. So that's what they were really angry about, really. Do you think that process has sort of saved him, or do you think this scandal is going to continue?
I think that process is what he used as an avenue to do what he's doing. And I think going back and reflecting back on what the leader of the Democratic Alliance said, that this is a broken man leading a broken nation. You're hiding behind democratic processes in order to do what you want to do. You think you're unchallengeable, nobody could challenge you. Now, as a president, that is meant to be setting an example, for the next generation that is coming. This is not good. It's not even good for the party. That he is the leader, and these are the issues that of concern. South Africa is meant to be leading. There are a lot of issues across the continent that South Africa should be leading in the front to ensure that those issues are dealt with. But where is he? He has so many challenges at home that he can't even deal with issues within the region, and that's where the challenge is for now. And he should be reflecting back on this matter and doing the right thing, because that's what people will expect from him.
Dorcas, we should point out Jacob Zuma's point of view that he says he deserves security, he's a head of state, and he deserves to be safe. Do you think there's anything in that argument?
Well, every South African deserves education and health and all the other aspects that everybody else is entitled to. This guy gives Julius Malema a job. Julius wouldn't have a job and a space to rant unless this guy was doing his job. So there are total real issues here that I think, I come from a health point of view. South Africa has, alongside Zimbabwe, we've got, down south, we've got raging HIV issues. The burden of the disease in terms of grandmothers who are looking after orphan children. This is what I'd like to see a leader tapping into, not building a £23 million crawl for his 8 wives. It's appalling.
And you mentioned the HIV issue there. There are obviously lots of issues in South Africa where that money could go to, and a lot of issues generally that any scandal like this may be covering up, and the media are concentrating on that. So I guess that's one of the big issues, is that while everyone's talking about this scandal, actually there are many more that the media should be focusing on.
Yeah, and it's convenient, actually, that they're talking about this. So when you look across South Africa and the kind of issues that are happening, the arrest of the people involved in the energy sector, the issue of mugging, gun crime and all those issues. It's a serious issues that more or less mask its failure in government, because really it's not actually done enough. The dividends of democracy have not yet been felt at the grassroots within South Africa.
Yeah, is that something you go along with as well, that generally this could even be a good thing for Jacob Zuma if it's masking all of those issues?
It's good for him. It's terrible for your everyday person. And there are real issues in South Africa. We see some of the highest xenophobic examples in South Africa. And this is fueled by the fact that a lot of workers have come into the country. When you move around the industries in South Africa, what's fueling the workforce in the economy are actually neighboring countries, people who are coming into the country. So that means he's not paying attention to the education and fostering, the grassroots projects that he should be fostering into. I'm not sure where South Africa is going with the tomorrow with Zuma. I think they need to, as a country, they've got a lot to review. He had a very interesting speech, Simon, a couple of weeks ago, in which he was making reference, conveniently or not, to the history of South Africa. And he was pretty much saying, all was well here until the first Dutchman landed in Cape Town. And you could argue that actually he's using a race card to kind of sort of fly away from the issue. But if he's diverting us from the issues that we need to, he's doing it very well. And I think we need to go back to the issues.
Yeah, all very interesting and all very complicated, guys. Temitope and Dorcas, thank you both very much for coming in.
Thanks.